Dong Hai, Thailand, May 1982. Little Stella, whom everyone simply calls La, loves to ask questions to her father, an American named Tom, who works at the secret Ramasun base. Their conversation is interrupted by the girl's mother, reminding them that it's time to go to the annual ritual of appeasing the demoness. The mother tells La that once, a group of villagers went in search of a magical ring that was supposed to bring prosperity. But after finding it, they couldn't agree on who would keep it and started fighting, causing the ring to shatter into several pieces. The demoness then killed them all and cursed the village with famine. Since then, people have been appeasing the evil spirit. The procession reaches the place where offerings are laid out. However, La cannot understand why her father does not believe in these tales, even though her mother insists that faith brings hope. Suddenly, a terrifying growl comes from the forest, but their neighbor Jambon reminds everyone to keep their heads down and continue praying. When the ritual ends, the people return to the village. At night, Tom goes back to the ritual site, and La secretly follows him, convinced that her father is looking for the legendary magic ring. Tom hides the girl in the ritual hut and leaves her a walkie-talkie so she can call for help. Then he heads to the clearing, where a glowing orb appears. He stretches out his hand, and the orb is about to descend into it when a monster emerges from the forest. The man tries to grab the orb and scare away the creature. In the end, a glowing pillar rises above the clearing, seen by Jambon back in the village. La runs out of the hut, and suddenly human bodies start falling from above onto the clearing. Terrified, the girl runs away. 30 years pass. Lei has grown up and now works at a planetarium. One day, she is accused of incompetence by the director, who is convinced that La's recent mistakes are due to her messy divorce. This conversation is overheard by Stella's daughter, Valian. Upset, La picks up her daughter and they go to a cafe. The tired girl falls asleep, and suddenly Stella receives a call from her old friend It, who tells her that her mother has been hospitalized. La and Valian drive to Dong Hai. On the way, it reveals that he runs a blog about ghosts, which alarms Stella. She wants to shield her daughter from anything supernatural. She still remembers how, after their journey into the forest, her mother and neighbor Jambon convinced her that Tom had abandoned them and that she had simply dreamed it all. Soon she arrives at the hospital, where her mother asks her to find her father. La dismisses this as feverish delirium. They drive to her mother's house, where Jambon is already waiting. He wants to buy their plot of land, but La is not ready to decide the fate of her family home yet. Jambon's son Kong informs Stella that he has repaired her motorcycle, and the woman is surprised that he hasn't changed at all. La recalls how the village harassed her after Tom disappeared. Boys decided to beat her up, but Kong came to her rescue, and even back then, he looked exactly the same as he does now. She remembers trying to call for help through her father's walkie-talkie, but no one ever responded. Recalling the call sign, La switches the device on again, but hears only static. However, at night, the walkie-talkie suddenly comes to life. La immediately recognizes her father's voice, giving coordinates for where to come, while Valian starts recording the transmission on her phone. In the morning, La plays the recording for her mother, who confesses that she has been communicating with Tom once a year because 1 year on Earth equals 1 minute in the cosmos where he is trapped. Tom asked her to take the bracelet and retrieve the ring from Dong Hai. They need to be used to activate the Takli Genesis, a machine located in the basement of the abandoned Ramasun base. Then she must input the coordinates he provided, and Tom will be able to return. La promises to find and bring back her father. La and It head to Kong because his father possesses a bracelet identical to Tom's. Lai asks Kong to consider why neither he nor his father seem to age. Jambon visits Dong Hai, but never tells his son why. Maybe it's time to uncover the truth. That night, Kong sneaks into his father's room and steals the bracelet and a gun. The group heads to Dong Hai. They scout the area, and Kong sees a glowing orb in the clearing. Then rotating rings appear, forming a sphere. La reaches out her hand, the rings collapse together, and the sphere settles into her palm. Suddenly, a woman emerges from the darkness and transforms into a monster. La grabs the sphere, and the group runs toward the car, but the monster blocks their way. Kong shoots at it, but is suddenly drawn into a vision where he hears screams and sees falling people. It and La drag him to the car, and they manage to escape just as Jambon arrives at the clearing. They reach the abandoned Ramasun base and descend into the basement where the Takli Genesis machine is located. La places the bracelet in its designated spot, and immediately Tom's voice crackles over the walkie-talkie. He is anxious to learn that he's speaking to his daughter after 30 years. For him, only half an hour has passed. He explains that he was a CIA agent and his mission was to find the Genesis. But that night he made a mistake and he ended up on a space station created by an advanced civilization. The station is still functional, but only has about 20 minutes of life support left. Therefore, he asks them to contact help through the old call sign, but Lei tells him that call sign no longer works. Tom explains that the Tackley Genesis is a teleporter operating at supersonic speed, which the military borrowed from aliens. It consists of a bracelet and a warp sphere. La, wearing the bracelet, must set a destination for the sphere. The first ring controls gravity, the second is a communication module, and the third is a chronometer that sets the travel time. The last two rings represent galactic longitude and latitude, determining the coordinates. However, the gravity ring and the chronometer have been scattered across time. She must find them to get the device working again. One is located around 5,000 years BC and the other in a distant future. Only by gathering all the parts can she save her father. Tom reminds her that the warp sphere takes everything within a 5-meter radius along with it and wishes her good luck. La and Valiant prepare for the journey when It and Kong decide to join her. They are transported to a mountainous region where they spot a camp of cavemen. However, prehistoric zombies soon appear nearby and attack the group. The people run toward the tents but bump into an energy barrier surrounding the natives' camp. The wall suddenly lets them through and cuts off the zombies. Kong realizes that the bracelet was responsible. The ancient people greet them with reverence, believing them to be gods. La assumes that the barrier was created by the missing part of the ring and that if they take it, the tribe will perish. But it reminds her that they would die anyway from the famine already affecting them inside the dome. Meanwhile, Valiant befriends a local boy, Martin, while Kong activates the warp sphere, which locates the missing ring part and pulls it in. However, at the same moment, the barrier disappears and the zombies attack the people. Kong shouts for his friends to leave, but while escaping, Valiant ends up near a prehistoric woman named Ahmad, and Martin, hiding behind La, falls under the sphere's influence. Transported into the future, La tries to return for her daughter, but Tom reminds her that she cannot precisely return to the same location until the device is fully operational. She must now find the second missing part, and only then can she rescue her daughter. La is preparing to activate the sphere when Jambone appears, demanding the bracelet back, blaming them for changing the present, and claiming he has waited 10 years to fix everything. Shocked, the group steps outside and sees destroyed houses and a monster ravaging Donghai. Still, La is determined to first save her daughter. Jambone threatens them with a pistol as La activates the sphere. Kong shoves his father aside, and La, It, and Martin vanish just as the gun fires. The three find themselves in a hangar surrounded by armed people, and another warp sphere operates above their heads. But suddenly, La and It are struck in the head and black out. When they regain consciousness, they find themselves chained. The people promise to release them if they teach them how to properly use the Genesis. The device they have was created based on old blueprints and doesn't function correctly. If they cannot activate it, they will soon die. It all started 200 years ago when a monster attacked the province. Western allies destroyed it, and the townspeople rebuilt the city. However, soon their fossil resources were exported, and the province fell into decline. The resistance forces decided to fight back. One day, an explosion rocked the city. The allies evacuated the rulers, leaving ordinary people to fend for themselves against the monsters that appeared from nowhere. That's when they found the Genesis. From the archives, they learned that the experiment dated back to the Vietnam War era and was based on advanced civilization technologies. They tried to recreate it to heal their world, but apparently they did something wrong. Decades have passed, yet they remain young. Now, seeing La and her friends, they believe things might finally change. Meanwhile, in the past, Kong realizes that Jambone is wounded. His father tells him that in 1964, during the initial Genesis experiments, he and General Levon's daughter were captured and used as test subjects. The girl was educated and quickly figured out how to operate the device. They managed to jump through time, but the soldiers got caught in the sphere's effect, causing them to shift several times before escaping pursuit. However, Levon was wounded, and when they arrived in Donghai, she was reborn as a monster. Jambone had hoped to find a cure after learning that the temporal portal remained open. That day, many bodies fell from the sky. Among them, a wounded Kong. The boy lost his memory, and Jambone called him his son. But now Kong is free, and Jambone asks him to take him to Levon. Meanwhile, in the future, the young people decide to free La and It. At the same time, Valiant and the prehistoric woman suddenly find themselves inside a movie theater in 2024. Valiant is overjoyed to be back home, but when they exit the theater, they see a giant monster destroying the city outside. Meanwhile, La agrees to teach the youth how to operate the warp sphere, but warns them of potential risks. The team decides to test the sphere on a captured dinosaur. La trains the girls to control the sphere, while two of the guys keep watch over the sky. The sphere activates and the dinosaur disappears from the cage, but almost immediately alarm sirens start blaring. Missiles are flying toward the city. Suddenly, the dinosaur reappears and attacks the people. However, it seems to flicker, shifting through the hangar. La asks them to return her bracelet and sphere, realizing what the mistake was. But just then, the dinosaur materializes right in front of them. The resistance fighters come to their aid. Together, they manage to destroy the beast. However, one of the lookouts on the roof is killed, and enemy forces are closing in. La suggests that everyone leave with them, but the young people insist on continuing the fight. Unexpectedly, the girl leader confesses that every time they activated the warp sphere, it caused a rupture in time, history changed, and chaos followed. Meanwhile, Valiant discovers that Amade is wounded. She seats her in a chair and treats the wound with some found alcohol. La learns that the alien invention had destroyed its creator's own universe even before humanity emerged. She urges the young fighters not to give up. The girl leader then gives La the last missing ring and shows her a model displaying the temporal fractures, on which La spots Valiant. The girl explains that La must return to the Ramasun base and send a signal into space. Then everything will be restored, and they will save their universe. Unexpectedly, she says her mother's favorite phrase about hope, something La's grandmother once taught her. Explosions rumble above, and La prepares to activate the sphere when it informs her he is staying to help the resistance fighters. He asks her to upload his journal notes afterwards. La and Martin return to the past, where they reunite with Kong. Now that they have all the rings, they can fix the past. Kong activates the sphere, but it transports them into a university courtyard where gunfire echoes inside. It turns out Kong decided to try to prevent a student massacre. He approaches the fleeing boys, and they recognize him. At that moment, Kong remembers everything that happened to him, but then they all come under fire from criminals. Meanwhile, Valiant suddenly sees a zombie and tries to hide. In the past, Kong's friends fall from the bullets. Time-space begins to shimmer and distort, rewriting events and further entangling the situation. Lei begs him to stop using the sphere, but Kong tries again to save his friends. Meanwhile, it takes up arms and sides with the young fighters. However, he suddenly realizes they are hearing a radio broadcast about the student massacre. A combat aircraft appears above them and opens fire, somehow hitting people in the past. Someone from the resistance shoots down the aircraft, and it crashes into the university courtyard, exploding. An injured Lei regains consciousness and searches for Kong, his friend, and Martin, trying to help them escape. At the same time, a zombie attacks Valiant and Amid. La's group is pursued by killers. Kong hands La the sphere and asks her to leave, choosing to stay in his own time. La activates Genesis, and they find themselves in 2024, where Amade is being bitten by a zombie, and Valiant sees her mother. Martin also runs toward his mother, but she has already begun transforming, and La pulls the children away. Genesis activates, and they all return to the base. A wounded La begs her daughter to start the machine, just as the Donghai monster bursts into the room. Martin tries to fend it off while Valiant activates the device. Tom responds and instructs the girl on what to do. They wait for the end as the machine activates. Lei loses consciousness and finds herself under a tall tree, which speaks to her with her mother's voice. She reassures La, telling her that she has won and can choose a new beginning. Then Tom's voice calls out, reminding her that a new timeline is about to start and everything will be all right. In the future, missiles vanish from the sky. Kong is alive, and Levon calls out to Jambone. La wakes up to Valiant's cries and sees Martin's bag in the room. She goes to her mother and breaks down in tears, feeling she failed to bring her father back. But her mother comforts her, saying that her father has become the sky and that they will plant a tree beneath it. Then Valiant brings in Martin, who has learned to write. Later, La takes out the warp sphere and thinks of it, wondering if she might still bring her friend back. A strange movie with an interesting idea but a choppy plot and unpredictable characters. The graphics aren't exactly Hollywood level, but they're also not from the last century. The actors perform well and are quite likable and recognizable to European audiences, which is important. So if you approach the viewing with the right mindset, you can genuinely enjoy it.